Hello and welcome to The Curious Mind. Tonight we're setting sail on a slow drifting journey into one of the oldest questions a thinking creature can ask. Can nothing create everything? Before we start untying the knots in that question, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Is it midnight in Madrid, early morning in Melbourne, somewhere in between where the day is just tipping toward evening? I like to imagine all the quiet corners where this voice is finding you, from city apartments glowing with lamplight to country porches where the only sound is the breeze through the grass. So, wherever you are, get comfortable. Maybe you're lying back, lights low, a warm blanket just heavy enough to keep you anchored. Let your shoulders soften, let your breathing slow. We've got all the time in the world to think about the beginning of the world. When we say everything, we mean it. Galaxies, stars, planets, oceans, forests, you, me, the thought you're having right now, all of it. And nothing? Well, that's trickier. We think we know what nothing is, but try to picture it, and your mind slips. An empty room? That's still something. A dark sky? That's still space. Silence? That's still the possibility of sound. True nothing would be no space, no time, no matter, no energy, and not even the potential for those things to exist. It's the absence of possibility itself. And yet, somehow, we live in a universe bursting with possibility. How? This is where the mind does a little double take. If there was ever truly nothing, how could there be something now? If nothing can't do anything, because there's nothing there to act, then how could everything begin? And yet here you are, listening to this sentence, in a universe full of stars and rivers and songs. It's a riddle wrapped in starlight, and tonight we're going to unwrap it, very slowly. Let's imagine we could rewind the universe, slowly at first, then faster. Galaxies pulling back into tighter clusters, stars unwinding their light, planets retreating into dust, the whole universe folding in on itself, smaller, hotter, denser, until we reach the moment before the first moment. Here, our usual ideas about time and cause and effect start to wobble. If time began with the universe, there was no before. Asking that what came before everything is like asking what's north of the North Pole. It's a question that sounds sensible, but doesn't really fit the shape of reality. And yet we keep asking. Some scientists think the universe might have been born from a kind of quantum fluctuation, a tiny ripple in a field of possibility that in an instant became space, time, matter, and energy. Others wonder if there are endless universes, bubbling up in a larger cosmic sea, each with its own rules. In that case, our universe wouldn't be everything at all, just one island in an archipelago too vast to imagine. But these ideas have a catch. They don't start from absolute nothing. There's always something in the background, a law of physics, a quantum field, a larger reality that existed before ours, which means the question just moves back a step. If you follow that trail far enough, you eventually end up at the same doorway. If there was ever truly nothing, could everything really have come from it? It's the kind of question that doesn't demand you solve it right now. In fact, it's a little more beautiful unsolved. You can let it rest in your mind like a seed, trusting that it might open later or never at all. And either way, the stars will still shine. If we're going to ask whether nothing can create everything, we have to be very clear on what we mean by nothing. The trouble is, nothing is one of those words that behaves differently depending on who's using it. A philosopher might tell you that nothing means the total absence of being, no matter, no energy, no space, no time, and no laws of physics, not even emptiness, just non-existence. A physicist, on the other hand, might point to the quantum vacuum, a state we might casually call empty, and then explain that it's anything but. Even when there are no particles present, this vacuum still hums with activity. Tiny fluctuations bubble in and out of existence. Pairs of particles and antiparticles appear, live out lifetimes measured in fractions of a second, and then vanish again. So which is the real nothing, the philosopher's pure absence, or the physicist's restless emptiness. In everyday life, we use nothing loosely. We say, "There's nothing in the fridge," when what we mean is, "There's nothing I want to eat." We say, "Nothing happened today," even though thousands of small events unfolded without our noticing. But in this conversation, precision matters. Because if we decide that the physicist's nothing is actually something, then we've quietly changed the question from "can nothing create everything?" to "can almost nothing create everything?" And that's not the same question at all. Let's try an image. Imagine you're standing in a pitch black room. No light, no sound. The air is utterly still. To your senses, this is as close to nothing as you've ever been. But in physics, that room is crammed with invisible activity, molecules vibrating, quantum fields rippling, gravity threading through space. You are standing in a kind of cosmic whisper, not a true silence. Now imagine taking away all of it, the air, the space, the time itself. Take away the possibility of temperature or motion. Take away the laws that say particles can exist at all. Strip away not just the furniture, but the floor, the walls, and the ground beneath them. What's left? The human mind can't really picture it. You can close your eyes, slow your breath, and try to sink into some blank inner space. But even then, you're somewhere, at some time, thinking something. That's not nothing. That's a quiet version of something. And maybe, just maybe, that's why this question has followed us for so long. Because we can't hold nothing in our heads for more than a moment before it dissolves into a fog of somethings. Let's, for the sake of the journey, imagine that somehow there was nothing. Not just a cold void, not just empty space, but the absence of space itself. No clocks, no distances, no potential. And then there was a spark. Not a spark in the usual sense, not a bright flash in a dark room, but a sudden unfolding of reality itself. Space stretching, time beginning to tick, energy rushing outward in every direction. This is what we call the Big Bang, though the name is a little misleading. It wasn't a bang in space, it was the creation of space. In the first moments, unimaginably brief, the universe expanded faster than light, a period known as cosmic inflation. During this time, tiny fluctuations were stretched to cosmic scales, planting the seeds that would one day become galaxies and stars. Now, here's the puzzle. If there was truly nothing before this moment, what set it in motion? In our everyday lives, things happen because something causes them. A glass falls because someone knocks it. A candle burns because a match is struck. We're used to the chain of cause and effect, but if there was nothing to strike the match, how did the candle of the universe begin to burn? Some scientists suggest that, in the realm of quantum physics, cause and effect aren't as fixed as they seem. Events can happen without a clear why, springing into existence spontaneously. If that's true, perhaps the universe's first moment didn't need a cause. It just happened. Others propose that our universe is part of an endless cycle, expanding, collapsing, and expanding again. So what we call the beginning was really just one chapter in an infinite story. In that case, nothing never existed at all. There's always been something in one form or another. And then there are those who suggest we might be thinking about nothing and everything the wrong way entirely, that the question itself might dissolve if we had a better language for reality. Maybe nothing is simply a word we invented for a state that doesn't actually exist. Whatever the truth, the fact remains. We live in a universe that began, at some point, from some state, whether that state was nothing, almost nothing, or something we don't yet have a name for. And here we are, billions of years later, able to sit quietly and wonder about it. That might be the most astonishing fact of all. Beginnings are comforting in stories. They give us a place to start, a moment where the curtain rises and the first scene begins. But the universe may not work like a stage play. In fact, the more we try to pin down a first moment, the more it slips away. You see, our minds are trained by life on Earth. Every day has a dawn. Every river has a source. Every tree has a seed. We take for granted that if we look back far enough, there will always be a first cause, a point we can label as the start. But what if reality doesn't have one? Some cosmologists suggest that time itself might be a loop. Imagine a snake swallowing its own tail, with no clear beginning or end. In such a universe, asking what came first is like asking, where does the circle start? The question loses its meaning. Others picture a more complicated structure, like an endless chain of dominoes falling, but with no first domino. The chain simply stretches in both directions forever. You can follow it back as far as you like, and you'll never find the start because there wasn't one. And then there's the possibility that before the Big Bang, time didn't exist in any form we'd recognize. Without time, before is meaningless. Our question, what came before everything, might be like asking, what's north of the North Pole? We can say the words, but they don't point to anything real. All of this leaves us in an odd position. If there was a beginning, we can't yet explain what caused it. If there wasn't a beginning, we have to accept that something, perhaps the universe, perhaps something beyond it, has always existed. And somehow, both options feel equally mysterious. Maybe that's why the question, can nothing create everything, isn't one we answer once and put away. It's a doorway. Each time we step through, we find a slightly different landscape on the other side. Sometimes it's a philosophical vista, sometimes a mathematical one, sometimes a deeply personal one. And each view asks us to pause, to breathe, and to remember that in a universe as vast and ancient as ours, the simple fact of existing is already a kind of miracle. One of the hardest parts about thinking about the beginning of everything is that we're trying to use rules that may not have existed back then. In the everyday world, those rules work perfectly well. Drop a ball and gravity pulls it down. Strike a match and it ignites. We rely on cause and effect, on the flow of time, on the existence of space. But in the extreme conditions of the early universe, or whatever preceded it, those rules may not have applied at all. In fact, physics tells us that at the very earliest moments, the known laws of nature simply break. Our equations can describe the universe back to a certain point, but before that, they collapse into infinities and contradictions. It's like following a clear trail through the woods, only to have it vanish suddenly into mist. Some scientists call this the singularity, not a physical point, but a boundary beyond which our current understanding can't reach. At that edge, concepts like space and time may lose their usual meaning. Energy might not behave the way we expect. The universe could be governed by rules we've never imagined. This is where theories like quantum gravity try to step in, attempting to merge the physics of the very large, Einstein's general relativity, with the physics of the very small, quantum mechanics. It's a little like trying to weave two different maps into a single picture. The process is slow, delicate, and filled with surprising shapes. One such idea is that space-time itself is not continuous, but made of tiny, indivisible units, like pixels on a screen. If that's true, then the nothing before the universe might not have been a smooth emptiness, but a kind of pre-geometry, a place where the building blocks of reality were suspended in a state beyond space and time. Another possibility is that our universe emerged from a quantum fluctuation, a tiny random event that didn't need a cause in the traditional sense. In quantum physics, particles can appear and disappear without warning, borrowing energy from the vacuum before returning it. If that's possible on the smallest scale, maybe it's possible on the largest too. Still, even these bold ideas leave us with the same quiet, stubborn question. If the universe came from something, even something strange and abstract, where did that come from? It's here, standing at the edge of our understanding, that we're reminded. Some questions are not walls to be climbed, but horizons to be approached slowly, with curiosity, knowing they may always remain just out of reach. There's something unsettling about the idea of a universe without a cause. In our daily lives, We're surrounded by chains of events. Every raindrop comes from a cloud, every cloud from evaporated water, every puddle from rain. We're used to tracing things back to something else, but the universe might not play by those rules at its deepest level. Some thinkers point out that the question, why is there something rather than nothing, assumes there must be a reason, that something must have been caused. But what if it didn't? What if existence is simply the default? This is a thought that can make you pause in a very still way. Imagine sitting by a calm lake. The water isn't moving. The air is quiet. The surface reflects the trees like a mirror. Nothing disturbs it. And yet the lake simply is. No one is holding it there in place. It's not the result of a chain of events you can see happening right now. It just exists in this moment. Perhaps the universe is like that, not the result of a grand mechanism, but a reality that exists because it exists. We might call that brute fact, something that simply is without explanation. Of course, that answer doesn't satisfy everyone. It can feel like giving up the chase. Humans are built to look for patterns, to connect dots, to keep pulling on the thread until it unravels into a story we can hold. To say, it just is like leaving a book with the last chapter missing. And yet sometimes reality doesn't give us the ending we expect. The story of the universe may not be a neat novel with a clear beginning and conclusion. It might be more like a song that fades in, plays for a while, and then fades out, leaving us unsure when it started or when it will end. If that's the case, then maybe nothing never truly existed. Maybe the idea of a pure total absence is a kind of illusion, a thing that only exists in the way we imagine it. Let's turn the question around for a moment. What if nothing isn't real? We use the word easily enough. We say we have nothing to wear, or nothing to say, or nothing in the cupboard. But in each case, there's something there, just not the thing we were expecting. Even in physics, the closest thing we have to nothing, the quantum vacuum, is alive with activity. There are no particles in the ordinary sense, but energy still flows through it. Particles appear and vanish. Forces stretch invisibly across it. It's like a stage with no actors, but the lights and scenery are still in place, waiting. If nothing is just an idea and not an actual state of the world, then the question, can nothing create everything, might dissolve. You can't get from nothing to something if nothing never actually exists. In quantum mechanics, the smallest scales of reality are never truly still. Even in what we'd think of as empty space, tiny events are happening all the time. Pairs of particles and antiparticles appear and then vanish, so quickly that they can't be directly observed without disturbing them. This isn't science fiction. It's a measurable effect, one that has been confirmed in laboratories. From one perspective, this is deeply unsettling. It means there's no such thing as perfect stillness, no way to stop the motion of reality, but from another angle, it's quietly hopeful. It means that the leap from almost nothing to something might be built into the structure of existence itself. Some scientists have even suggested that the universe itself could have emerged from a quantum fluctuation, a random event on a scale far beyond our everyday experience. Not caused in the usual way, but allowed by the deep rules of the quantum world. Of course, this doesn't end the mystery. If the quantum field made the universe, where did the quantum field come from? We find ourselves moving the question back another step, and another, and another. Each answer seems to carry a quiet echo. Yes, but what came before that? Perhaps the lesson here is that our minds evolved to measure days and seasons, to notice the ripening of fruit and the migration of animals, are not naturally tuned to think about the birth of universes. It's like trying to hold an ocean in your hands. You can carry a little, but most of it will always slip through your fingers. This would mean that something has always been here, in one form or another. Not always stars and galaxies, but always some kind of reality, maybe a quantum field, maybe something stranger and more abstract that we don't yet have words for. It's a little like the ocean. If you stand at the shore and watch the waves, you might imagine the water appeared just for you, just in this moment. But in truth, that ocean has been there long before you arrived, shifting and changing shape. It doesn't begin when the first wave touches your feet, and it doesn't end when you leave. Maybe reality is like that ocean, endless in some sense, with no point where it truly began or will truly end. What changes are the waves, the patterns, the temporary forms. Stars flare into life and fade away. Galaxies swirl and drift apart, planets form and dissolve. Life appears, flourishes, and transforms. But the underlying something never vanishes. If that's true, then the riddle of nothing creating everything is a riddle of our own making. The universe doesn't need to leap from nothingness into being, because it was always here, in some deep and hidden way. That thought can be strangely comforting, like realizing the ground beneath your feet has always been there, even when you couldn't see it. If the idea of something from nothing feels impossible, another path is to imagine there was never a nothing to begin with, only cycles. Some cosmologists suggest that our universe may be one phase in an endless pattern, expansion, collapse, expansion again. Like a breath, drawn in and let out over spans of time, so vast they make the age of the dinosaurs seem like a flicker. In these cyclic, or oscillating models, the Big Bang wasn't the first moment, but the latest renewal. Before it, another universe might have existed, and before that another, each one giving way to the next. No absolute beginning, just a chain without end. Others picture a kind of cosmic tree, with new universes budding from old ones. Ours might have sprouted from the collapse of a star-like object in a larger, older reality. In that case, everything is just one branch among many, all connected to a trunk we cannot yet see. This idea doesn't remove the mystery, it simply moves it into a larger frame. If there have always been cycles, then the question becomes, why do the cycles exist at all? What is the soil that the cosmic tree grows in? Even if we could one day prove that universes bloom and fade endlessly, we might still find ourselves staring at the same horizon, asking the same quiet question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Maybe the answer isn't in finding the very first cause, but in realizing that our need for a first cause is a kind of habit, a shape our minds like to see in the fog, even if the fog has no beginning or end. Sometimes the barrier to understanding isn't the universe. It's the words we use to describe it. Take the word before. It works beautifully for most things. Before breakfast, you boiled water for tea. Before winter, the leaves turned gold. Before a river reaches the sea, it winds through hills and valleys. But when we try to say, before the universe began, the word starts to twist in our hands. If time itself began with the universe, there was no before in any normal sense. We're borrowing a word from our everyday lives and asking it to describe something it was never built for. The same thing happens with nothing. In conversation, nothing is easy to use, but in philosophy or physics, it becomes slippery. Are we talking about the absence of matter, the absence of space, the absence of laws? Each definition changes the question. It's possible that "can nothing create everything?" sounds profound because it's mixing everyday words with ideas they can't quite carry. Like a small boat trying to cross an ocean, the language strains under the weight of what we're asking it to do. Some philosophers suggest that our minds evolved to navigate a very particular world, one of rivers and seasons and faces, and that when we try to stretch those same mental tools over the entire cosmos, they bend in strange ways. We might not just lack the evidence for an answer, we might lack the kind of thinking that could ever find it. That doesn't mean we should stop asking. In fact, there's a quiet beauty in asking questions that may never be fully answered. They keep the mind humble and the world mysterious. No matter which path we take, quantum fluctuations, eternal cycles, or the illusion of nothing, we always end up here, in a universe that exists and in minds that can wonder about it. And that is remarkable. We could have been in a universe where nothing could ask questions, a universe without awareness, without curiosity, without beings who could even form the idea of nothing in the first place. Instead, we find ourselves here, not just existing, but thinking about existence. That spark of awareness might be the strangest thing the universe has ever made. Stars are vast, but they do not wonder how they were born. Oceans are deep, but they do not lie awake imagining what came before them. Galaxies spin, but they do not try to measure the darkness between their arms. You and I, sitting here, in this moment, are tiny compared to the scale of the cosmos. And yet we carry the whole thing in our minds, in a way. We can imagine its birth, its possible end, its infinite variations. We can trace it back billions of years in thought, even if we can't truly reach the beginning. Maybe that's the real magic. Even if we never find the answer, the fact that the question can be asked is itself a kind of creation, the universe creating curiosity inside itself. And perhaps as we move deeper into the night, that is enough. If the universe had a first moment, it has left us clues. Not full memories, no photograph of the instant of creation, but faint fingerprints scattered across the cosmos. One of the most important is the cosmic microwave background. This is a soft, uniform glow of light that fills the universe in every direction. It's not bright enough for our eyes to see, but sensitive instruments can detect it as a faint radio signal, a whisper from when the universe was only a few 100,000 years old. That glow is the cooled remnant of the moment when matter and light first parted ways, when the universe had expanded enough for atoms to form and light to travel freely. Before that, the cosmos was a hot, opaque fog, where particles and photons jostled together in a dense soup. When scientists measure the tiny ripples in that ancient light, they're looking at a map of the universe's earliest structure, a fossilized image of the moment just after the beginning. Those ripples tell us that the seeds of galaxies were already present then, long before any star had burned. But the background radiation also raises questions. If the universe came from nothing, why does it look so uniform, so finely balanced between chaos and order? If it had begun even slightly differently, it might have collapsed in on itself immediately, or expanded so fast that no stars or planets could ever form. Some see that balance as evidence of deep physical laws, woven into reality from the start. Others see it as a sign that there may be countless universes, each with its own rules, and we simply happen to live in one that allows life. In either case, the cosmic microwave background is an echo of something we still can't fully explain. It's like hearing a faint drumbeat through the walls, knowing a song is playing, but not yet knowing who began it. When we talk about everything, we often forget just how specific that everything has to be for us to be here at all. The universe isn't just any random collection of matter and energy. It's arranged in a way that seems strangely well suited to producing stars, planets, and eventually life. For example, the strength of gravity determines how matter clumps together. If gravity were slightly stronger, the universe might have collapsed into black holes before galaxies could form. If it were weaker, matter might never have come together at all. No stars, no planets, no chemistry of life. The same goes for the electromagnetic force, the mass of subatomic particles, and the rate at which the universe expands. Change any of them by even a fraction, and the cosmic stage might be empty. No actors, no audience, no story. This fine-tuning has led to a range of explanations. Some say it's evidence of deeper principles we haven't discovered yet, rules that make the universe's shape inevitable. Others suggest it's a sign that there are many universes, each with different settings, and we simply live in one that happens to work. Still others see it as a mystery that might never be resolved. But fine-tuning brings us back to our original question. If the universe's laws are so specific, could they have emerged from nothing, purely by chance? Or do they suggest that nothing already carried the blueprint for everything within it? It's here that the question takes on a quiet weight, because even if we can't yet see the answer, we can feel the strangeness of living in a reality where everything fits together just well enough for us to be asking why it fits together at all. If you strip away the stars, the planets, the galaxies, even the light itself, what remains? According to our best understanding of physics, what remains are the rules. Invisible, intangible, yet absolutely unshakable. The laws of nature hum quietly beneath everything. Gravity still curves space, energy still shifts form, time, for as long as it exists, still flows forward. But here's the puzzle. Where do the rules come from? Mathematicians can write equations that describe the universe's behavior in astonishing detail, from the arc of a comet to the orbit of electrons around an atom. But the equations themselves seem to float above reality, like a score above a piece of music. The music changes, but the score remains the same. Were those rules always there? If the universe emerged from nothing, did the rules emerge with it, or did they already exist in some strange, timeless way? Some thinkers imagine that mathematics is a kind of eternal realm, not made of matter or energy, but of relationships and patterns that exist whether or not anyone is there to notice them. In this view, the laws of physics might be like constellations in a sky no one had ever seen before, always there, just waiting for the first spark of reality to light them up. Others take a wilder view. Perhaps the rules themselves evolved. Perhaps there was a kind of pre-universe, a chaotic rule soup where different physical laws flickered in and out until one combination proved stable enough to grow into what we now call our universe. And still others dare to ask, what if the rules are an illusion? What if they are simply habits the universe has developed? Patterns we mistake for laws because we've only ever lived in one small corner of the cosmic story. Like shadows in a cave, the equations might be hints of something larger, shapes cast by a reality we cannot yet see directly. If our universe is just one among many, what lies between them? It's a question that pulls the imagination into deep, uncharted waters. If there are countless universes, each with its own beginning, its own physics, its own story, then the space between them might not be space at all. It might be something we don't have words for yet. Picture it like this. Imagine a library where each book is a universe. Inside each one, the story unfolds according to its own rules. Characters are born, events happen, endings arrive. But between the books, there are no characters, no events, just the quiet shelves, stretching into the dark. Maybe the nothing between universes is like that, a stillness where no time flows, where no matter moves, but from which a new story can be taken down and opened at any moment. Some theories suggest this inter-universe realm could be a kind of higher dimensional space, a vast backdrop in which entire realities drift like soap bubbles. In that view, our Big Bang was simply the moment our bubble formed, swelling with energy and space until it became the cosmos we see today. Others propose something even more curious, that universes might be born when existing ones collide. In those moments, the nothing between them isn't empty at all. It's the potential for an entirely new reality, triggered by the meeting of two cosmic giants. If this is true, then nothing is never truly nothing. It is possibility, the silence before the first note of a song, the blank canvas before the first stroke of paint. And maybe, in that sense, nothing creating everything is not a rare miracle, but something happening all the time, just not always in a form we can witness. When we speak about the beginning of everything, we almost always picture it in time, a before and an after, a first moment followed by another, like beads on a string. But what if time is not as solid as it seems? Some physicists suggest that time may be an emergent property, something that appears only when the universe reaches a certain level of complexity, like how the smoothness of water emerges from countless molecules moving together. In that view, the earliest moments of the universe may not have been moments at all, but something entirely different, a timeless state that only later gave birth to the flow we now experience. If time itself had to emerge, then asking, what happened before the universe, becomes as strange as asking, what's the colour of Tuesday? It's not a question with a sensible answer, not because the answer is hidden, but because the question doesn't fit the thing we're trying to describe. This doesn't mean the past is an illusion in the way a mirage is. The memories we carry, the records we keep, they are real enough. But the deep structure of time might be more like a map than a road. All the points on the map exist at once, but we experience them one at a time, tracing a path we call now. In such a reality, the universe doesn't begin in the way a firework begins, with a burst from darkness. Instead, it simply is, the whole of it, past, present and future, laid out like a great tapestry, and our lives are threads moving across it, not starting or ending in the way we imagine, but always part of the fabric. If that's the case, then nothing might simply be the places in the tapestry where no thread passes, not empty in the ordinary sense, but untouched, unwoven, yet still part of the whole. There's a limit to how far we can see, not just with our eyes, but with our minds. In astronomy, the observable universe is defined by how far light has had time to travel since the Big Bang. Beyond that, there may be countless galaxies, but we will never see them, because their light hasn't had time to reach us. The same might be true for our understanding of existence. There may be truths about the beginning, or the absence of a beginning, that lie forever beyond the human horizon of comprehension. And yet here's the paradox. Even if we can't reach them, we can still point toward them. We can still feel their presence in the way a sailor feels the shape of land in the wind, or the way a listener senses the end of a symphony before the last note plays. It's possible that we live in a universe where some mysteries are permanent, that the question, can nothing create everything, is less like a puzzle with a solution, and more like a poem whose meaning changes each time we read it. That might frustrate us at first, but it also means the mystery is never exhausted. The question remains alive, always ready to open again on a quiet night, when the stars are clear and your mind is still enough to listen. And perhaps that's the most human thing of all, to stand at the edge of what we can know, looking into the dark, and to keep asking, even when we know the answer may never come. When we look out at the universe, we think we're seeing it directly, the stars, the galaxies, the spaces between. But in truth, we're always seeing it through a mirror. That mirror is our mind. Everything we understand about reality is filtered through the way our brains process information. Light enters our eyes, electrical signals fire, patterns are recognized. Even abstract thought follows paths shaped by the biology and history of our species. This means that when we ask, can nothing create everything? We're not just asking a question about the universe, we're also asking a question about the way we think. Are our minds even capable of picturing true nothingness? Or are we like fish trying to imagine dry land, aware that it's possible in theory, but unable to feel what it's like in any real way? Philosophers have long warned that our deepest questions might be tangled in the limits of our own perception. We can only think with the concepts we have, and those concepts grew in a world of seasons, rivers, storms, and living things, not in the strange environment before time began. That doesn't mean the search is pointless, quite the opposite. It means that by chasing these questions, we sometimes stretch the limits of what our minds can do. We invent new mathematics, new metaphors, new ways of thinking. We learn to imagine things we've never seen, and in doing so, we may not only understand the universe a little better, we may also understand ourselves. Perhaps the reason this question haunts us is that it's a mirror. We're not just looking for the origin of everything, we're looking for the origin of the ones who are asking. Stories are one of the oldest tools we have. Long before we built telescopes or particle accelerators, we told stories about how the world began. Some were poetic, a song sung by a god, a dance that spun the stars into place. Others were more concrete, a great tree whose roots and branches held all the worlds. Modern science tells a different kind of origin story, a sudden expansion of space and time, a searing ocean of energy, cooling into matter, stars and planets. But it is still, in its own way, a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an open-ended future. Perhaps that's why the idea of nothing creating everything feels so strange to us. It's hard to tell as a story. What's the first scene in a tale where there was no stage, no actors, no light? How do you narrate the leap from no possibility at all to the first spark of possibility? Some thinkers suggest that maybe the universe is a story, not in the sense of being fictional, but in the sense of having structure, rhythm, and meaning that unfold in time. If so, then nothing might be the pause before the first word, the blank page before the ink touches, not part of the plot, but still part of the book. In this way, we might imagine that nothing and everything aren't enemies or opposites, but dance partners, each giving meaning to the other. Without nothing, everything would lose its contrast. Without everything, nothing would not even be noticed. And maybe that's the quiet truth. The question is not about whether nothing can create everything, but about how the two are woven together in ways we're only just beginning to sense. When you hold a pebble in your hand, it feels small and solid. You can see its shape, feel its weight, know it's there. But inside that pebble, in the arrangement of atoms and the binding of their particles, is a history stretching back billions of years. Every atom in that pebble was forged in a star, and that star was born from clouds of hydrogen that formed when the universe was young. In a very real way, the pebble is the universe's autobiography written in matter. Now imagine, instead of a pebble, you held the idea of everything. Every galaxy, every drop of water, every heartbeat, and not just what exists now, but what has existed and will exist. It's too heavy to carry, but it all exists within the same reality you're living in at this moment. The strange thing is that nothing can feel heavier than everything when we think about it long enough. Everything we see, hear, and touch is something, but nothing forces us to imagine the absence of all that, an absence so complete it feels like it could swallow the mind. Some thinkers have suggested that maybe everything was inevitable because possibility itself carries weight. In other words, if there is any potential for something to exist, eventually it must. And that potential may not require a cause in the way we understand it. It might simply be the nature of reality. If that's true, then the question of whether nothing can create everything is turned on its head. Perhaps nothing is unstable, unable to remain nothing. Perhaps the natural state of reality is to overflow into existence. One of the most humbling things about existence is how delicate it all seems. On cosmic scales, the balance of forces and conditions that make life possible feels almost impossibly precise. Our planet orbits at just the right distance from the sun. The sun burns with just the right steadiness. The chemistry of life works only because the universe's laws allow certain kinds of bonds to form and hold. We live in a narrow band of conditions, not just in space, but in time. The universe had to be old enough for heavy elements to form in stars and be scattered into space, but not so old that stars have burned out and galaxies have faded. It's a middle chapter in a much larger book, one we happen to be reading right now. This fragile middle is what makes the idea of nothing creating everything so intriguing and so baffling. If everything began from nothing, how did it end up with such precise conditions for complexity, for life, for awareness? Some argue it's coincidence. In a vast or infinite set of universes, some will naturally fall into this narrow balance, and we just happen to live in one. Others think it suggests something deeper, that perhaps reality has a built-in tendency toward order, a way of arranging itself into patterns that can grow and evolve. Either way, the fact remains. Here we are, in this small window of time, able to ask these questions. And the fragility of our moment doesn't make it less real. it makes it all the more precious. Imagine a theatre before the show begins. The seats are empty, the stage is bare, the lights are dim. At first glance, it might feel like nothing is happening, but is that really true? The theatre still exists. The air is there, moving faintly. The stage has weight. The lighting system waits to be switched on. Every inch of space is full of potential. The moment the curtain rises, it will all change. But even before that, the stage is not truly nothing. Now replace the theatre with reality itself. If there was a moment before everything we know, was it truly empty, or was it a kind of cosmic stage, waiting? If so, then nothing may have never been absolute absence, just the absence of the things we're familiar with. It's possible that what we call nothing is simply a state without matter, without light, without the familiar patterns of our universe. But beneath that apparent emptiness, there might still have been the groundwork, the hidden structure, that allowed something to begin. This is why physicists sometimes warn against taking the word nothing too literally. Even a vacuum, the emptiest place we can create, still has properties, energy, and potential. If the early universe began from a state like that, then perhaps the leap from nothing to everything wasn't as impossible as it seems. In that sense, maybe nothing has always been a stage with the lights dimmed, waiting for the first line to be spoken. When the first moment of the universe came, however it came, it was the opening of a door that had never been opened before. In an instant, space expanded, energy appeared, the laws of physics began to operate, time started its steady flow. Whatever had existed before, or if anything could even be said to have existed before, was left behind. Scientists call that moment the Big Bang, though the name can be misleading. It wasn't an explosion in space, it was the creation of space itself. The distances between points began to stretch, carrying matter and energy with them. If we think of it like a breath, then it was the first inhale, not of air, but of possibility. That breath carried the seeds of galaxies, of stars, of planets, and eventually of the living beings who would look back and wonder where it came from. Some believe that breath came from a fluctuation in a quantum field. Others think it was the rebound of a previous universe collapsing. Still others see it as a unique, unrepeatable event, the single birth of all that is. No matter which view is right, the fact remains. Everything we see now, from the faintest grain of dust to the brightest star, was once packed into that beginning. We are, in a very real way, the unfolding of that first breath, stretched across billions of years. And so the question lingers, was that breath drawn from nothing, or was it always there, waiting to be released? If the universe is a breath, then it is also a song, one that began in that first, almost unimaginable moment. The notes of that song are the laws of physics, the harmonies are the galaxies, and the rhythms are the cycles of birth and death that shape the cosmos. What's extraordinary is that the song plays itself. There's no conductor in the centre, waving a baton. Once it began, the music unfolded naturally, each note flowing into the next. Hydrogen formed, then stars, then heavier elements, then planets, then life. Some melodies are soft, the slow drift of continents, the long cooling of worlds. Others are loud and sudden, a supernova scattering elements into the dark, or an asteroid striking a young planet. But all of them are part of the same composition. If this music began from nothing, then nothing must have held the potential for every note that would ever be played. That idea is almost impossible to picture. How can absolute absence contain the blueprint for such a vast, rich arrangement? Yet the music is here, and we are part of it. When we ask questions, when we look at the night sky, when we notice the small details of life, we are hearing the echoes of that first chord. And perhaps we are also adding our own quiet notes to the song, which will ripple outward into the future. The question, can nothing create everything? May be like asking, can silence create music? The answer might be yes, if the silence is the kind that waits just before the first note, holding it in perfect stillness. One of the most compelling ideas in all of cosmology is continuity. the sense that what exists now is directly connected to what existed at the very beginning, without any breaks in the chain. The atoms in your body are ancient travellers. The hydrogen in your blood has been around since the early moments after the Big Bang. The calcium in your bones was forged in the core of a star that lived and died long before the sun was born. The iron in your blood was born in the violent explosion of a supernova. In other words, you are not separate from the history of the universe. You are a living continuation of it. The story of everything didn't just happen billions of years ago. It's still happening right now. In you, in me, in every star that still burns. If nothing truly existed before the beginning, then everything we are is a direct transformation of that nothing, shaped into particles, into matter, into life. If something existed before, then we are made from that as well, carrying it forward in ways we may never fully grasp. Either way, there is an unbroken thread running through all of it. We are the latest chapter in a story that began at the very first moment, and when we wonder where it came from, we are the story asking about itself. And that perhaps is why the question will never fade. It is written into the fabric of what we are, a curiosity passed down from the first spark of existence, still searching for its own reflection. Some questions seem built to be solved. What causes the tides? How do seeds grow? Why does the moon change shape in the sky? Each of these has an answer that can be learned, tested, and confirmed. But other questions are different. They are more like rivers that wind endlessly through the landscape of thought, never reaching a final sea. Can nothing create everything? Maybe one of these. Even if one day physics presents us with a complete mathematical account of the universe's origin, there will still be room for wonder and for doubt, because any explanation will raise its own before question. If the universe came from a quantum field, where did the field come from? If it arose from a multiverse, why does the multiverse exist? This looping nature means the question isn't a door you pass through once. It's a path you keep returning to. Each time you walk it, the scenery may have changed. A new theory may have appeared. An old one may have been refined, but the horizon always stays just ahead. That might frustrate the part of us that craves closure, but it also means the question will always be alive. It will never become a dusty answer stored on a shelf, taken down only for reference. It will remain fresh, open, inviting us to think again. Perhaps that is its purpose, not to be solved and put away, but to keep us in motion, to keep our minds reaching outward and inward for as long as there are minds to ask. If you've ever closed a book before the last chapter, you know the strange power of an unfinished story. Part of you longs to know the ending, but another part is grateful for the space to imagine your own. The origin of everything may be one of the greatest unfinished stories we will ever hold. Science has filled in many chapters: the birth of atoms, the rise of galaxies, the formation of stars and planets, the emergence of life. But the prologue, the very first line, remains unwritten. That blank space at the start of the page is not wasted. It gives the rest of the story its mystery, its depth. It reminds us that there is more beyond what we can see, that our knowledge is not the same as the whole of reality. And there's a kind of quiet beauty in that. If the story were complete, if we knew every detail, perhaps we would lose something important: the thrill of discovery, the humility of not knowing, the connection to all the generations before us who looked up at the night sky and wondered the same thing. In this way, can nothing create everything is less a problem to be solved than a gift we inherit. It's a reminder that we are part of something vast and unfinished, that our place in the story is both temporary and timeless. And maybe, when the book is passed on, the question will still be there, waiting patiently for the next reader to turn the first page and ask it all over again. If we step back far enough, not just in space but in thought, we might notice something about this question we've been following. It moves in a circle. We begin by asking if nothing can create everything. We explore science, philosophy, mathematics, even imagination, and we arrive at possibilities, a quantum fluctuation, an eternal cycle, a timeless realm, or the impossibility of true nothingness. But each answer, no matter how convincing, eventually curves back to the same point. Why is there something at all? This circular nature doesn't mean the journey is pointless. In fact, it may mean the opposite. A circle has no start or end, but it allows you to keep moving, keep seeing the landscape from new angles. Each trip around reveals details you missed before, a connection between ideas, a new observation, a subtle shift in perspective. And while the question loops, the horizon keeps expanding. Our understanding of the universe has grown more in the last century than in all of human history before it. We've gone from wondering about the bright dots in the sky into knowing they are suns, many with planets of their own. We've detected whispers of the first light in the cosmos. We've learned that space itself can stretch, carrying galaxies away from each other faster than light. And yet the horizon always stays just ahead, a reminder that curiosity doesn't end at the first answer, or even the 100th. It is its own form of creation, drawing something new from the nothing we once thought was empty. So here we are, at the quiet end of this long wandering. We began with a simple greeting, an invitation to think together about one of the deepest questions there is. And now, after tracing the question through science, philosophy, and imagination, we find ourselves where we began, in the middle of mystery. Whether nothing can create everything may remain unanswered for as long as there are minds to ask it. But perhaps that's the point. The question is not a locked door we must force open. It's a window, always offering a view of something beyond our reach. And in that view is something worth keeping. The reminder that we are part of this vast, unfinished reality. That our lives, small as they may feel against the backdrop of galaxies, are made of the same matter, the same energy, the same ancient light that has travelled for billions of years. So as the night deepens around you, let the question rest. Let it drift into the background like the hum of distant stars. You don't have to solve it tonight or ever for it to be yours. Close your eyes and imagine the first moment of everything, whether it was a breath, a spark, or a song that began in silence. And then imagine the space before that moment, whatever it may have been. Somewhere between those two images, the spark and the silence, is where the mystery lives. And maybe that's where we live too, carried forward by the story of everything, still listening for the next line. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for being here tonight. Sleep well, dream deeply, and may your dreams carry you to the edge of everything, and just a little beyond.